Folks on the left who like to criticize President Obama got some much-needed perspective this week when Dick Cheney emerged from his bunker and reminded everyone who got us into this mess in the first place. He was everywhere, morning shows, prime time, cable, plugging his book and his own twisted version of history. It's a message the folks over at Fox were eating up.
And joining me now, we're very honored to have former Vice President Dick Cheney with us for the hour. Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us.
John, it's great to be here.
And now, without any further ado, the author of In My Time, Dick Cheney, Vice President of the United States. Mr. Vice President, it's a pleasure having you here on the couch.
Well, it's good to be here.
Good to have you. Incredible job on this book, by the way. Very comprehensive. Good career.
But not everyone was feeling so warm and fuzzy about the former vice president.
To write a memoir in which you say essentially nothing seriously went wrong, if I wrote a memoir of my last week, I would have things to apologize for.
In the book, he says he would do it all over again the same way. He would make no changes. He said he would still, honestly, he still feels strongly about this. He would still invade the wrong country. He is so confident that
it's not necessary to take these kind of barbs and then try to pump a book up by saying heads will be exploding. I think Dick overshot the runway with that kind of comment.
Dick Cheney said that his new memoir will have, quote, heads exploding in D.C. Yeah, especially if you read it while you're on a hunting trip with Dick Cheney.
And through it all, Cheney stuck to his guns and refused to apologize or admit he'd done anything wrong.
You say it is one of the things you are proudest of, and you would do it again in a heartbeat.
It was controversial at the time. It was the right thing to do.
No apologies.
No apologies. I think we did the right thing. It's important for us not to get caught up in the notion that you can only have popular methods of interrogation if you want to run an effective counterterrorism program. Fact is, it worked. As I look back on Iraq, I think it was the right thing to do.
Dick Cheney might not have any regrets about his 8 years in power, but a lot of other people do. Joining me now is John Nichols, Washington correspondent for The Nation. He's written 2 books about the former vice president. John, thanks for being here. Do you think it was helpful to be reminded of the real Bush-Cheney record this week?
I think it was tremendously helpful, and I think it is important that it came in a week where polling showed us that the majority of Americans still put more blame on George Bush than they do on Barack Obama for the economy. And I bring that up first because Cheney's book is really a foreign policy book. It doesn't deal much with domestic policy. But when you dig into it, and when you look at some of the things that this Bush administration did on economics, it's just flat out shocking.
Well, let me
put
a pin right there. I want you to finish that. But let me show a graph to our viewers of exactly what you're talking about, the poll of what Americans say, who they blame. Americans say President Bush, 52%, President Obama, 32% of who they blame. Now, when Cheney was questioned this week about President Obama on the economy, I want to show you what former Vice President Cheney said about President Obama on the economy.
The fact of the matter is, if we talk about unrestrained spending and a lack of discipline with respect to spending, I think the Obama administration's record is the worst we've seen.
But let's go to the facts, as we would say in sports. Let's go to the tape. And who spent the most? Under Bush and Cheney, total cost of new policies, $5.7 trillion. Under President Obama, $1.44 trillion. This is if you cost out everything that they've initiated in terms of new policies. So, John, you're absolutely right. The figures speak for themselves in terms of who spends in an unrestrained way.
Absolutely. And it goes deeper than that, Reverend, because when you take a look at the book, you realize why they screwed up so badly. Cheney acknowledges in this book, and this should have been a much bigger headline, that when they made economic policy, they didn't include the Secretary of the Treasury. They literally did not bring in their own cabinet members. It was simply Cheney and the political people sitting around figuring out how big of a tax break they could give to billionaires. And that's writ large across this book. You begin to understand in reading it that a guy who ran his own company, Halliburton, into the ground. Right. When Cheney left as Halliburton CEO, that company was in severe trouble, then took over U.S. economic policy and ran it into the ground.
When you said CIA, you mean CEO. Was that Freudian or were you... let me
that's
ask
a little
you this,
bit.
John.
That's about as Freudian as you can get.
All right,
yeah.
But let me ask you this, and because I don't want people to miss this, because I almost did. Are you saying when they were going over economic policies, he admits in the book they didn't have the Secretary of the Treasury in the meetings?
Absolutely, I am saying that. That is in the book. What Cheney says is that there were several times where they had major meetings on tax cuts and budget policy, and they did not include Secretary of the Treasury Paul O'Neill. And then Cheney amazingly says, in hindsight, maybe we should have invited O'Neill. Now, I think it's important to remember who Paul O'Neill was. He was the one successful businessman in the administration, and he was the one guy who said that they should be a little more careful with some of these tax cuts, a little more responsible in some of their budgeting, and so they just didn't let him in the meetings.
Well, you always have something that we didn't know. Thank you, John, for your time. Have a great weekend.